Welcome to Ideagen TV, live from Washington, D.C. Honored and privileged to have a fellow Rhode Islander here.
That's right.
Fellow colleague in the White House, Sean Spicer. Sean, welcome.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you here. Looking good as always. So you've enjoyed an extensive career in communications. You've done a lot. You've been press secretary, White House press secretary. You have your own show. You know how to communicate. And you've been in the White House, like I mentioned, and the Republican National Committee, NRCC. I remember those days a long time ago. I'm dating you. It's not possible because you're still 20. But, you know, Sean, what is the key to effective communication?
A couple things. I think too many times people confuse tactics with strategy. So they'll say, okay, let's put out a press release. Let's send a tweet. You have to have a strategy. Where do you want to end up? And then work backwards, right? So too many times people focus on the tactic and they'll want to, hey, we should get the boss to give a speech. We should go out and do that. Those are all tactics. It's sort of like building a house and just saying, okay, let's go get a bunch of boards. You have to have a plan. You have to know where you want to go, where you want to end up. And too many times I think people chase the tactic and don't have a comprehensive strategy. So in a crisis situation, obviously today we're dealing with the tragedy. There's a lot of groups that are like, let's get something out. Why? Why are you doing that? What's the goal? Who's the audience? And think backwards. What are you trying to actually affect change with? Is it that you want an audience to know something? Because I think too often people just literally, I had a phrase during media training, too many people put the secretary in press secretary. So they'll pick up the phone and they'll be like, hey, tell the boss, oh, there's a reporter from the Washington Post that wants to talk to you. Okay, well, a secretary does that. There's no element of strategy or thought that have gone into that. Why do they want to talk to you? Should you talk to them? What's the message you want to get out? And too often it's just, oh, well, I don't know. They called. And like I said, anyone can answer a phone and do that. Good communicators think through the process and the strategy that they want to end up at and work backwards.
You know, that's incredibly insightful. And so what methodologies do you use, do you employ when crafting messages to ensure it's impactful and can resonate with different audiences and stakeholders?
So I think, again, part of it is to understand what their goals are. What are they trying to achieve? So like in a place like DC, is it that you want to elevate your status? You want to be part of the conversation? You want to be a player in a policy discussion? That's a very different thing than trying to change the outcome of a specific policy, right? So a lot of times you get a CEO of an association and they want to elevate their status within maybe DC or within the community, within Capitol Hill, but that's very different than, hey, we have a bill or a piece of legislation that we're trying to stop. And so part of it is making sure that everyone agrees on the goal. What is it that you're actually trying to do or stop or amplify? And then take stock of what you have. Not everybody's good on television. And part of it is risk, right? It's like investing. You sometimes will sit down with the broker and they'll say, okay, what's your degree of risk? How much do you want to get out there? When do you need your investments to mature by, et cetera? Well, the same thing's true with stakeholders in a communications fight. Some of them are like, I want to do all this, but I don't want to say anything. I don't want us to be public about it. It's like, okay, well, that's not going to happen.
Right.
So part of it is to be realistic with the folks as far as what is it going to take to do that? Who are the people that you have? And one of the things that I like to tell clients once in a while is like, sometimes you can have a coach, but you need players.
Right.
So I can sit back and say, hey, I can tell you what to do, what we need to happen, but there's got to be other players on the field. So maybe it's the CEO, maybe it's some other outside stakeholders, board members, whatever. But you've got to have a team. It's not just hiring one person and going, okay, it's a quick fix, it's over.
You know, it's an interesting time in Washington and around the world. What are some of the ways you can overcome the challenges in a polarizing environment in terms of communication?
Well, never before have so many tools been at people's disposal. Like when I first got into the business, like, you know, if you wanted to go do a bunch of TV hits, you had to go to a television studio. You could even do satellite tours, but they had to be, I mean, you can do a satellite tour pretty much off your own computer these days if you've got strong internet and a good background and all that kind of stuff. The ability to communicate through social media channels and everything else has allowed anybody to have the opportunity to engage. And so part of it is using the tools available to you in an effective way. And so it used to be, you know, hey, if you wanted to get involved in the conversation, you had to go buy 1,000 points of TV in certain markets. Now you can do it with a lot more effective and accountable ways. What I mean by that is, Nielsen will tell you if you buy 1,000 points of TV, the average viewer sees it 7 times. They can't prove that. It's a guess. Sorry, TV people. But the consultants get 15% of the buy, so they love it. But when you do digital tactics, you can geo-target who you want. You can look at the demographics of who you want. And you can find out, did they click? Did they act? Did they do something? So it's not saying that one's better than another, but part of it is now figuring out what you're trying to achieve, who the audience is, and having some degree of accountability.
Incredible. So what's the most valuable lesson you've learned managing high stakes communications?
I think what I said at the beginning, which is to know your principal, know what their goals are, and be clear on them. So we usually, when I'm engaged with them, I'll write a plan and be like, do we agree that this is what we want to do? This is how we want to do it, so that when you go back, that there's no misunderstanding. Because too often I think people come out and say like, oh my God, I saw that. I always tell people to use the investment strategy. Again, it's not all guaranteed upside, right? So you punch a story out, you might bring some people out of the woodwork that suddenly hate on you or oppose what you're doing. And so explaining the risk to them, making sure that they understand that not everything is send something out, everybody loves you. And also to manage that. Like there are people who will watch something and say, oh, I should go on television. Could you just get me on Fox? Like, yeah, sure. Yeah. I can also get you a balloon ride over the Washington Monument. I mean, it's just, that's not how it works. And yet too many people think that like somehow all they need to do is just get 20 minutes on, you pick your station, Rachel Maddow, Sean Hannity, whatever. If you can just do me that, everything will go away. It's like, that's not, there's a degree of reality when it comes to the goals and the expectations, and you've got to make sure that everyone's clear on what those are.
So what lessons, you worked in government, you work with corporate leaders, what lessons can each learn from each other in terms of effective communication?
Well, one, everyone's got a role to play. Lawyers have a role to play. Your policy people have a role to play. And understand, like, bring your communicators in. What are your goals? What are you trying to do? But I find, I watch a lot of Law and Order, so I always think that I can be a lawyer, but I can't. And it's the same thing with what we do. It's a profession. And too many times, good organizations bring the communicators in at the front end. Hey, this is what we're trying to do. Can you help craft a plan to do it? But on the flip side, I've been part of several organizations where it's like, okay, so what we did is we sent this thing out. Now, can you fix it? It's like trying to put the genie back in the bottle. And that doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. And so good organizations understand that everyone's got a role to play and respect the role of what the communications team's supposed to be doing. Bad ones go ahead and do stuff and then try to get people to say, okay, now fix it or mold it, whatever. And once the ship has sailed, there's only so much you can do.
Sean, you've worked with a lot of leaders across the spectrum, across sectors, across Washington and around the world. What would you say are some of the key qualities that you've seen that are essential for effective leadership?
It depends. So, I mean, I spent 26 years in the military, and there's the different ethos there, which, taking care of your sailors, in my case in the Navy, is critical. If you want employees to respect you and to work hard, they have to feel like there's value in what they're doing. And so knowing your people, knowing what they do, knowing how they contribute, knowing how to motivate them. I mean, there's simple little things that you can do to highlight people's work. Knowing your own strengths and weaknesses. Like you have to be able to do like a SWOT analysis of yourself. What are you good at? What are you not good at? And trust the people that can build that team up, right? So right. I find the best leaders are the ones that empower you and recognize their strengths and their weaknesses.
That's great. And I agree. You're a leader. This is more of a personal question, but what is an example of a leadership challenge that you have overcome that you can share with our global audience and how you achieved it through effective communication?
Just trying to think off the top of my head. Look, when I was at the RNC, in the latter part of my tenure there, we recognized several big problems that the party had, and we went out gathered the right people together, figured out how to get buy-in from everyone. Because that's the other thing. You part of this is when you have an issue, getting the buy-in from the right people is what matters. And so we went out and reformed the entire primary debate process because we explained the problem really well. We gave them a solution. So when we present the problem, half the time, a good leader will go and say, we got a problem. Here's how I think we can solve it. What do you guys think? Let's get some buy-in. If you just simply say, hey, here's the problem, you're going to get everyone in the world's going to have an opinion. You're going to get 50 different directions and not buy in. So what we were able to do in that particular situation is we knew we had a problem. We knew the party was losing its grip on something. We devised a solution that we thought was a smart one. We figured out who the right people were that we need to get buy-in from, and then sort of got them to get in with us on the solution. And ultimately, it was an unbelievable, huge success. But part of it was the process by which we did that. If you walk in a room and just tell everyone, here's what we're doing, you might be successful 50% of the time at most. But I think if you get the buy-in from them as to that they feel like they're bought into the problem that exists and the direction that you want to go, your degree of having success is going to be a lot higher.
Incredible insight. Incredible. And a final question for you, which is, what is your call to action for our global audience? You're a communicator, you're a leader, you've served in our nation, and thank you for your service. What is it that you would say, the one thing that you would say, look, this is essential. This is essential for communicating effectively.
Well, again, I would go back to know what you want to accomplish. I mean, anyone can make noise, especially in these days. You can send out tweets, you can put out statements, you can do videos, but you have to know where you want to go. And too many times, like I said, I see people just throwing tactics at a wall and then hoping that it gets them somewhere. I mean, sometimes you might actually be somewhat successful in that. But if you don't know where you want to go, then people aren't going to follow you, number one, and your likelihood of success is pretty small because it's like waking up and getting into a car, just, starting to drive and hope that you end up exactly where you wanted to go without a map, without a destination in mind. I mean, maybe you might get lucky and be happy where you end up, but the odds are pretty good that if you don't do any of the planning, you don't have a set of where you want to end up. I don't want to disparage a state, but who knows where you end up.
Fair. Sean, how do people learn more about your work and what you're doing?
You can send cash. And I'm on my website, SeanSpicer.com, do a newsletter twice a week. It's free. You can always become a VIP member. And then I've got 2 shows on YouTube, my YouTube channel every night. One is live at 9:00 every morning. Myself, Mark Halpern, a guy named Dan Turrentine, who was a Capitol Hill chief of staff. He worked for Hillary Clinton. And it's the only live interactive show about politics. So for a half hour, we talk about the issues of the day, and then we take questions from anyone around the world. It's actually unbelievably unique. We got a live event Sunday night in DC. And then at 6:00, same channel, I have a tape show, which is a little bit more political. But 2 shows, both on my YouTube channel that you're always free to go to. Just go to YouTube, Sean Spicer. Skip past all the Melissa McCarthy stuff. You get there.
Sean Spicer,
Thanks for that.
thank you so much.